100,000. It has increased in numbers, the number of people coming out, Egyptians in protest, up to 500,000 in Tahrir+square, which is half of the amount which is predicted for the 1 million man march that is supposed to occur tomorrow. So there you are seeing the live images that are coming there, showing the numbers of people, huge numbers of 1 million out. Other images that we get, of course, are from previous hours and days in Egypt, but there are restrictions placed for us on that. Continuing with our discussion, we talked about Tony Blair. Interestingly, in the same breath of his statements, he did mention that we cannot have the disruption to happen regarding the Israeli and the Palestinians overall. So it does rank high if Tony Blair is a mirror of other officials, Western officials, of how important a role this particular piece plays, and that's the Israel-Palestine issue.
Well, absolutely. Tony Blair was once described as the foreign minister of U.S. President W. Bush. So, I mean, his moves and his statements are always in tandem with those of the American administration. One of the salient features of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East is to make sure that the status of Israel is never disturbed. So it makes a whole lot of sense for the perspective that Tony Blair represents to hope or to wish that the situation in Egypt will not deteriorate to the point where it might become a threat to Israel.
Professor Al-Khashan, I have a feeling from you that you do not think that there's going to be a complete upheaval, roots being pulled out of Mubarak's regime, that you think that the transition governments will indeed occur. And given the nominees, is that my correct comprehension?
Not quite. You see, a revolution takes time. We are in the initial stages of a revolution. It took Mubarak and Sadat before him years to build this huge edifice of a security-based system. So you cannot dismantle the system overnight. The process has begun. The wall of fear has been shattered. So, this burgeoning revolution will continue to reveal itself, and it will take quite some time before it achieves its objectives. So, we are still in the beginning of an unfolding process. So let's not try to overtax what we are seeing right now. Let's give the Egyptians the time they need in order to crystallize the sense of direction and also make sense of what they want. And keep in mind, the Egyptian revolution, if I may call it this way, remains a syphilis. So, yes, there are scores of people on the street, 500,000 people are at Tahrir+square right now, but what the movement lacks is a credible leader to shore it to safety.
It's interesting that you say, let's give Egyptians the time. That's exactly the sentiment and words that were actually echoed on the streets of Egypt. Just a day or two ago, we had reports indicating that that's indeed one of the slogans that the Egyptians are saying to the Americans, to the U.S. officials. Don't take this revolution away from us. The question is the United States going to allow that? Is the United States, with all the vested interests, not only financially, when we look at Egypt, we also have to take into account the port city of Suez. We can see how important a role that plays. For them to leave that alone and have a power vacuum get created, they're not going to sit back.
Well, let's keep in mind that those Egyptians who are in the streets of Cairo and Alexandria and other cities on the Suez Canal and the Delta did not go there simply because they got their orders from the U.S. And I don't think that the U.S. has anything to do or the ability to curtail the movement in the streets.
Okay, looking at our attention towards the cabinet and looking at the VP, how do you read Suleiman being put into that position? Is that not obviously something that the people want? They want completely for that any remnants, very similar to what happened in Tunisia, to be taken out from those positions?
Yeah, you see, this designation is ex post facto. What Mubarak did yesterday and today could have been acceptable a month ago. But now, after people went on the street, after the barrier of fear has been broken, after so much bloodletting, I think the Egyptians want to complete their course, and they want nothing less than the transformation of Egyptian politics. So, I mean, what we are seeing now, these are men of the regime. You know, the regime is trying to die hard. So, I mean, Mubarak simply is unable or unwilling to accept that he is outdated now. He appears to have a false consciousness. He arrogates to himself things and powers that he no longer owns.
Everything, in some respects, seems to be concentrated on the military, doesn't it? I mean, the military is where people are hoping to get their side, for the military to come behind them. I want to go back to the U.S., who has significantly invested in the military. Also point out that over the weekend, Defense Secretary Robert Gates, he has spoken to the Field Marshal Tantawi, the Egyptian Minister of Defense, and the Joint Chief of Staff, Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen, has spoken with his Egyptian counterpart. Again, we can see how they're behind the scenes working to gain the support of the military. And I'm talking about the United States.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, I mean, after all, the Egyptian army is the major and the most powerful institution in the land. And if the Egyptian army makes the wrong move, then the whole country could be swung from one dimension into another. The Americans want to make sure that the Egyptian army does not take the wrong highway. So they are keeping direct and continuous contacts with them. The chief of staff of the Egyptian army was in Washington when the revolution began, and he was rushed back to Cairo to make sure that things remain under control. So, I mean, given the amount of investment of the U.S. in the Egyptian army over the years, they have every reason, according to their own line of thinking, to make sure that the army will remain in control of the situation, because they cannot trust the people in the street. Because they know that left to their own means, the people may lead Egypt to destinations unfavorable to the Americans.
Okay, thank you very much, Hilal Khashan, Professor of Political Science there from Beirut with his statements. We appreciate that. Obviously, thank you, the viewer, for watching. Stay tuned to Press TV as we bring you more rolling coverage. This is in between the news bulletins, which is coming up in just a few minutes' time. Do stay with us as that approaches.